Right guys, welcome back. So today we're going to discuss and talk about strings. So many of you will know there's two primary data types in Python. There's either integers, so an integer could be something like this, x equals 5, and you can now multiply x by 2, will give you 10. Or you can do what is called a string. So instead of x, we're going to have say a equals apple. And then if I print A, you get an apple. So you can see the difference between strings and integers, but reality is Python doesn't know what a string is or what an integer is until you put something in speech or quotation marks. So in this video, we're going to discuss strings, but not just give you a basic overview of what strings are, but I'm going to give you a bit more detail on how you can manipulate strings, which will allow you to better understand how string values work in Python, and more importantly, how you can control them and manipulate them whenever you have a data project or just for general learning. So in future, whenever you're dealing with string values, whether it's names, company names, whether it's records, staff members, customer names, whatever that may be, you'll be better placed to manipulate and control string values using Python. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to show you is a basic statement. So we're going to create a variable. So let's just quickly tidy this up here. I'm going to create a variable, and the variable is going to be an obvious one, hello world. This is something done quite often, nothing new here. For now, type variable, you can see I've got hello world. But what if I wanted to recall a certain character within the string value itself? So for instance, using the variable name, or using the string variable, in this case variable itself, I can then give or ask Python to pull back, say, the third character, and the third character here is given as L, which is correct. So you can now see how you can use Python to pull back certain position within a string. Now, and you can do that by using square brackets. Now, not just that, you can actually use a range as well. So you can actually do, say, 0 to 5, and you can get a range of values at the same time. But note, if I put in 1, that instead of starting at H, Python actually starts at E. Now, why is that, you're probably wondering? In the world of programming, well, in the world of Python at least, Python starts counting from 0. So this H value is actually 0 as a position, and E would be the first position. So if I wanted to just identify the position for H, I'll just enter 0, and that would give me H. So remember that, because that's something that catches a lot of people out. In the world of Python, counting starts from 0. And the opposite is also true as well. So if I was to type in, say, 2, I'd get L. You can actually even type in minus, say, 5. You'd get W, and that's counting from right to left. So you can really utilize the power of positioning within a string variable and really call upon certain positions that you need, whatever that may be for. You may be looking to split apart a string value. You may be looking to isolate a particular value within a string. And that's how you do that, using this position kind of function, if you like, within these square brackets. So that's the first thing I want to show you guys. The second thing I want to show you guys is a problem that some of you may encounter or may face whenever you're having to, say, work with formulas and calculations. So I'll give you an example. So say we have a random number, and I'm just going to create a random number here, and we're going to give this random number a value, and say the value for this random number in quotation marks. Let me just do that again. Start again. Random number. And we're going to give this a value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, just for short, I'm just going to call this Rn. rn1 in this case. rn1 is a random number 1, and our value is $123,456,789. Now the problem is this is as we all know, a currency value. However, it's given as a string. So the challenge arises when you want to multiply, say, rn1 by, say, 3, or actually say 12, because this may be, say, a monthly average. You want to annualize it. You want to analyze it over 12 months, and that will give you an annualized number. But if we do that, we get this. Now this looks quite bizarre. So what's going on here? What's happened is, because Python doesn't know any better, because it recognizes this as a string, it doesn't recognize it as a number, it, instead of multiplying it by 12, it repeats the value by 12 times. Hence why you see these dollar values appear time and time again. So in order to get this, I'll turn this into an integer, which is often the case when you're working with data or spreadsheets or databases. You need to do some work to clean it up. So the first thing we want to do is, firstly, we want to remove the dollar value, and then we want to remove the commas, and then we want to we'll be able to control the value better and multiply it however, or divide it however we wish, and use it in any calculations or formulas. So to do that, firstly, let's just make sure that we can, let me just show you what would happen if you try to force the change from a string to an integer. So here, typically what you do is you do rn, you do int, and then rn1, and that would force the value rn1 into an integer. If I hit enter here, you see I get an error, and that's because of all the other characters. It doesn't like the dollar sign, it doesn't like the commas. So what we really want to do, we can check what type rn1 is. You can see rn1 is a string, and that's what we've created, and that's what we're trying to now convert. So what we're going to do firstly is strip the dollar sign. To strip the dollar sign, we need to use what is known as a method. Now, there are two types of things, formulas in the world of Python. You have methods and you have functions. Okay. Now, a method, let's just start off with functions here. A function is a formula. Essentially, think of a formula like you would in Excel that applies to any data type or set. Okay. So a function, for instance, could be a print function. Okay. A type is also another function. So you might have seen print, that's a function. Another one is type, that's a function. These are functions that will apply to any value in Python. However, there is one more type of formula, and that is known as a method. Now, a method is a formula that only applies to a specific data type, okay, or a class. So in this case, a method that we're using, or we will be using, will only apply to string values. So let's get started. So the first method I want to show you guys looks like this. So we do rn1 strip, and what we want to do is strip the dollar sign from this string value. So to do that, we need a quotation mark and the dollar value. So this essentially will allow us to strip the dollar sign from the string. We hit enter, and now you can see the dollar value has disappeared. So that's good. Now if I type in rn1, you can see, unfortunately, however, the dollar value is still there. That's because we need to reassign rn1. So what we need to do here is either rn1 equals rn1, or we can do what I like to do is just carry on and keep it clean and do rn2 equals rn1. So now when I type in rn2, I get the value that I was hoping for. Now, we're still not finished. We need to now remove the commas. Now, removing the comma values requires another method. So this is a method. The strip is a method for a string. The other method to remove the comma values, whilst you may think a strip would work in this case, it wouldn't, because the strip method only applies to characters at the beginning or the end of a string value. So we need to use another method for this one, and that's carrying on here, rn2 dot, and this one is replace. So this time around, we're replacing a comma and we need to finish off the argument here, and we want to replace this with nothing. So remember this, because this might catch you out a little bit. So we use quotation marks, comma, close a quotation mark, then a separator, another comma, and the value we want to replace the comma with, and in our case is nothing. And once again, we need to assign this either to rn2 or rn3 in my case, which I like to do. And we're going to hit enter. And now we can print rn3, and we can clearly see we've removed the comma values. We're not finished yet, because if we do type, which is a method, which is a function, if we do type rn3, you'll still see that it's a string. So what we need to do now is we now lastly need to use a function to replace the string into an integer. And to do that, we just do rn3. Okay, remember Python is case sensitive, so you can't have r lowercase n, you have to have r uppercase n, and we hit enter, and now we've got our number. So a reminder, guys, if you want to assign this value now as an integer, you now need to create a new variable. So rn4 equals an integer of rn3, and now when we do rn4, we've got our value, our numerical integer. And to make sure this works, we can do rn4 times 12, and we actually get a true multiplied sum. So that's how we did it. It took a few steps, and we managed to get to the number that we wanted right at the very end. But what if you wanted to do all of this in one go instead of writing several lines of codes? Well, there is in fact a way to do that. And to do that, real quickly, I'll just delete some of these values here. We need to do what's called a stacking of our formula, of our code. So this is how it would work. So we know the value of rn1. We now want to do, say, rn2. And what we're going to do with rn2 is we're going to do a strip. We're going to strip the dollar value. And then we go straight into our second method, which is replace. And we're going to do a, remember, quotation mark. We're going to do a comma, a separator, and then up another quotation mark, this time with nothing in it. And then lastly, we want to make sure that this entire thing outputs as an integer. So to do that, we're just going to assign a new variable, rn1. We're going to do rn2 equals rn1. So we're going to strip rn2 becomes random number 2 becomes random number 1, a strip of the dollar value and the commas. And then lastly, because an int is actually a function, we need to wrap the entire thing with an int right at the start. So now when we hit enter and then rn2, we now have our numerical integer value. So now we can just do rn2 times 12, and we can get the same value that we had earlier without several lines of code. So guys, I hope this has been useful. I want to give you a really brief overview of string and string methods. It's important to know strings and how to manipulate strings. In a future video, I'll show you how you can apply the same kind of methods and functions and clean up operations, but instead of single variables or string variables, we'll run the operation on an entire column of data within an Excel file or within a database. So do look out for that. But in the meantime, I want to give you guys a taste of what it's like to manipulate and work with string values. And I hope it's given you guys some appreciation of how string values work and strings work generally in the world of Python. Guys, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.